You walk into a house, you think, wow, this is gorgeous, I can fix it. And then actually it could be some of the fixing that you do that winds up poisoning your kids.
I think what's really a concern here is he dealing with ADHD as a result of lead poisoning, or is it something he would have had all along? I don't know, and that's the frustration.
It'll be a reminder for the rest of my life that we poisoned our daughter.
The fact is, no one wants to be responsible for allowing a child to be poisoned by lead. And yet, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention say lead poisoning is the #1 preventable environmental cause of illness in children.
We need to understand the Centers for Disease Control estimates that here in Indiana we have about 13,000 children that are lead poisoned, already have lead in their system or are at risk of that.
And far and away, that toxic lead exposure is coming from the one place our children are supposed to be the safest, in their own homes.
When you look at across our state, I believe we rank the 11th state with the highest number of homes that still have, that were built before like the 1970s, that have lead in the paint.
Well, it's a real problem especially in a major metropolitan city such as Indianapolis, because we have about 25% of our homes were built before 1978, and so they have a lot of lead paint inside their homes. So it continues to be a problem, especially for families who have children under the age of 6, where they're the most impacted by lead poisoning.
The use of lead-based paint in residences was banned by 1978. Indiana law presumes the paint in any home or child-occupied facility built before 1960 contains lead-based paint. However, for safety's sake, it's best to assume any home built before 1978 can be contaminated. Lead is poisonous to everyone, but particularly to children age 6 and under. Registered nurse Carol Denlinger is a lead case manager for the Elkhart County Health Department. She explains why young children are the most at risk.
Children up to age 7 have not developed the blood-brain barrier, and what that is basically is a structure. It's pretty cool. It's a structure within the central nervous system that does not allow toxins to pass from the blood to the neural tissue, but it does allow good nutrients to pass, but not bad. So it's pretty amazing. But children don't have that until they're age 7. So those children are susceptible under age 7 to the lead poisoning. The lead attacks the central nervous system, along with actually every organ in the body is affected by lead, but especially the central nervous system.
Just as we know adult doses of medications are dangerous to children, we also know lead is far more toxic to children than to adults. Denlinger says young children absorb 50% of the lead they're exposed to, while adults absorb only 10%. Imagine that the small amount of sugar found in this single packet was actually lead dust. If you spread just this much lead dust over 1/3 of a football field, that exceeds the EPA's safe lead dust level.
It can affect their learning ability. Their cognitive function may not be there. They may even have psychomotor retardation and other parts of the body, such as becoming very anemic. They can develop kidney failure. And so, our young are really the most vulnerable.
Lead dust poisons children. When it gets into the brains of children younger than 7, it disrupts developmental processes during critical growth periods. The disruption is potentially severe, and the damage is permanent. A child who has been lead poisoned is more likely to have a lower IQ, is more likely to be in special education classes, is more likely to be incarcerated for violent crime, and is more likely to have a low-wage, low-skilled job as an adult.
Lead has no use in the human body. There's no reason why we need lead in our body, so it is nothing but a toxin. And when it impacts the nervous system, that damage is done.
Damage due to lead poisoning is irreversible. Health officials continue to lower the amount of lead believed to cause damage in young children. Currently, a level of 10 micrograms per deciliter of blood is considered an elevated lead level. So how are small children being exposed to toxic levels of lead in their own homes? They literally consume it. Peeling and chipping paint may seem obvious, especially on the exterior of an older home, but it's lead paint dust, created by the friction of opening and closing lead-painted windows and doors that may not even be seen by the naked eye. And yet small children crawl in the dust, they play in it, and then they put their toys and hands into their mouths. In much the same way, they may come into contact with lead in the soil around the foundation of their home.
Homeowners and contractors need to know that is when we talk about paint, we talk about all coatings, which includes the varnish, the stains, the shellacs of the old days. And so if somebody has an original coating on the floor or on the newel posts, parts of the stairs, a mantle, windows, and they want to strip that, then they know they might be stripping and creating lead dust. So any dust that's generated, of course, is harmful to the children. So we have to concentrate not only on the paint, but we have to think about the other areas that might also have coatings that contain lead. We can walk in to this room and talk about windows, several places that we have friction and impact. So friction is an area, windows in particular, as windows go up and down, you generate a lot of lead dust with the old paint. And so that's a place of particular importance and one of the first things that renovators often work with. And so there'll be much lead dust there, not only from the friction, but what's accumulated over the years from the dust that's blown around. Another issue that contractors and homeowners need to be aware of is clothing and shoes. So when a contractor's done with the work, we encourage them to either wipe off their shoes, to wear booties the whole time they're doing the work and leave those behind. Also, not wearing those shoes home. So whatever shoes they have at the workplace, they'll never take those into the home.
It's a lot of heartache for the families because it's a preventable disease. They didn't know about it, and now, I mean, damage happens at the time of exposure.
Carla Johnson of the Marion County Health Department knows the heartache firsthand.
My now 11-year-old son has lead poisoning, and I found out that he was lead poisoned when he was 1. What's interesting is I would not have necessarily known to have had him tested had I not been working where I work. I didn't know about lead poisoning. I found out about the age of 1 that he was lead poisoned after a pediatrician did not test him at my request because he said he didn't need to be tested. So I persisted a little bit and found out that he did indeed have a lead level initially of 21 micrograms per deciliter. So if you think about 10 micrograms per deciliter being the threshold in which a child is considered elevated, he was just about double that. My son was a dirt eater, so I think that he probably got it from the soil in our yard. And what's really interesting is for a child's play area, above 400 parts per million is considered elevated. I had my yard tested and it was about 250 parts per million. That's still below the standard. That is something that even as a health department would not require a homeowner to do anything about, but I think there was a cumulative effect. So what's really interesting and what's important to note is that even though it is less than 400 parts per million, my son still got lead poisoned from that.
10 years after his diagnosis, Carla's son struggles with ADHD and reading difficulties. She is frustrated that she'll never know for sure if these problems might have been caused by his lead poisoning. And she worries about how the consequences of lead poisoning may affect him the rest of his life.
How long is he going to have to deal with this? And now where do I go from here? Is he going to be on these drugs through high school? At what point do they stop becoming something that sedates him and becomes a stimulant for him? You know, all of these issues that come up with that I wish I didn't have to include lead poisoning in the equation when I consider why is he this way.